Congratulations on the film.
Thank you very much.
So, tell me a little bit about what it means, because this story's been told a few times, but you weren't available probably to see those films. So tell me what it means to have this story out in such a public way. So at the Toronto International Film Festival, there were hundreds, if not, a couple thousand people there to see it. Tell me a little bit about what that means to you.
Well, this documentary actually came about due to, at the time that we started working on it, that Peter and Fran came up with the idea there was nothing happening in the case. We had all this new evidence coming out, and the judge had refused to hear it. So Peter said, well, then let's get it out to the American people. If the judge refuses to hear it, then let's get it out in the court of public opinion. So the filming was taking place the whole time that the investigation was going on, so they got everything on film. So what it comes down to is this film would have been the case we would have presented in court were we to go to court. There's that, and it also, it differs from the others, the previous things that people have done, other documentaries, other TV shows, other books, and that this is the very first time Lori and I ever took part in telling our own story. We were actually producers on this documentary. So we allowed Amy Berg, our director, into our lives in ways that we never had with anyone else before. Things like just reading our personal letters into our personal relationship. We had always been really protective of that, and it had always kept all media sources outside that before. And Amy also was really great at getting people to talk to her who had refused to talk to anyone else. Like the judge in the case, the prosecutor in the case, had never spoken to anyone before, and she got them to open up and do interviews.
Lori, I think I know the answer to this already, but I'm going to ask anyway to hear it in your own words. This wasn't just a process that happened over a couple of weeks or a couple of months. This was years and years, and it must have been frustrating, and it must have seemed hopeless at times. And what was it that kept you just fighting and chiseling away at this?
Well, Damien, he's an extraordinary person, and our relationship is, you form bonds when you're going through something like this that are just hard to explain, but they're just, I just said it, extraordinary, but it was the fact that I knew we were going to prevail. I knew we were going to from the very beginning, and I refused to let any other thought enter my mind. So if you wake up every day with that thought in your mind, it got really hard at times and bleak. But we had so much support around us, and it was building all the time, and so that momentum was very helpful. And just the fact that we had so much love and support around us. But Damien was really amazing, keeping my spirit, keeping me going, keeping me disciplined. He's very good at that.
Well, it seems to me in the clips that we hear of phone conversations in the film from while you were still behind bars with you, just that you were the one that was being encouraging, that sort of thing. Tell me how it's possible to keep your spirits up in that situation when you've been in that situation for a very long time and the outcome is uncertain.
I don't think it is possible. Lori and I both brought different things to this relationship. I think, like she was just saying, I would try to find things that would inspire her, make her want to fight more, make her feel the sense that we're going to win, while what she brought to it was levity, humor, lightness. She kept me from sinking down into dark, desperate, hopeless places. She was the one who brought the fun to the relationship. So it was like both of us were bringing something that the other one needed, and it was that combined effort together, which is what kept us going.
What's your life like now?
It's a little chaotic and a little...
this weekend particularly, I know.
Yeah. Damien's been out just about a year now, and in some ways it's been a different kind of learning experience because there's just no precedent for this, and how do you know what to expect with someone who's come out of prison and solitary confinement at that? So it's been a process as to how to learn what he needs and how to it took me months to realize that he's got a great deal of trauma and stress to deal with, and he has to learn how to live in the world, how do you know how to guide someone through that or to help them through it? But at the same time, there's a great deal of joy and and happiness, and it's just sort of keeping it all somehow contained and just getting from one place to the next. We don't even have a home at the moment. Actually, we're going to have one next week, which is great. So it's one thing at a time. Yeah.
What has been the strangest or the biggest adjustment for you?
Everything,
Yeah.
because at the time that I got out, I had been in solitary confinement for almost a decade. So I literally went from solitary confinement one day to the next day just being thrown back out into the world. And, I went in 1993. So whenever I came out in 2011, it was a whole different world. So it's really everything. I think if I had to narrow it down, I'd say what it comes down to is choices. You make no choices in prison. So out here, it's like having to choose constantly. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and it's having to learn new things all over again. Even how to go to the bank or use an ATM or use a computer.
What Pinterest is, all those things,
Yeah,
like all
exactly.
this stuff.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And this might seem like an odd question, but do you, in some ways, in any way, miss the kind of regimented part of your life that was part of your life for so long, in that you didn't have to make decisions and that sort of thing? Or is it, because it becomes part of your life, I would think. And the adjustment to move out of that must be very difficult.
Mm-hmm. I don't miss it. Even while it's going on in there, the level of stress and anxiety and fear that you live in is beyond comprehension to most people. You never even go to sleep all the way. Just the slightest noise wakes you up. There were times in the prison whenever you hear a noise and you're on your feet in the middle of the cell ready to fight before your eyes even open up, before you even are conscious of what's going on. It becomes programmed into you so deeply like a reflex. So you're always tired. You're always wore down. You're always on the lookout for what horrible thing is going to come next. So that overrides everything else, so there's absolutely nothing about it that you miss once it's over.
Yeah. I was thinking, I guess, in sort of a broader terms, but it's rare. I think for someone who's never been in jail, I think it must be. I've never, we're not arguing, never been, and the idea of it is incomprehensible to me. And on the days that you were in there, you had 18 years to think about this, and you knew you were innocent. How do you rationalize what's happening with your life?
I don't. I was in a state of deep, profound shock and trauma for at least 2, maybe 3 months whenever I first got out. And ever since I've been coming out of that, really what life has been for me is just trying to figure out how to put one foot in front of the other, how to keep moving forward, how to, I have so much fear and anxiety and everything else just about, surviving in the world now, that most of what I'm doing and dealing with and coping with is about how to move through that, how to get beyond that. And that's all I focus on, really.
Well, the support of not only Laurie, but people like Fran Walsh, Peter Jackson, Johnny Depp, Henry Rollins, must go a long way towards making the transition at least a little bit easier. And it has to.
There's no way we would have been able to survive without it. Whenever we left Arkansas, we left literally like refugees. I didn't even have a change of clothes. I didn't have a penny in my pocket. We had nowhere to go. So it's like the support didn't stop. Once we got out of prison, people have, been trying to help us get our feet up under us and start a life for ourselves. And there's no way we could have made it without all the help we've been given.
And do you feel, in some ways, the Alford plea that was entered? When I was watching the film, I'd read about this, and I obviously had heard it on the news, and I was aware of it, but I wasn't aware of the real ramifications of the Alford plea. And so my take on it is that it's Arkansas saying, okay, listen, we've made an enormous mistake here, but we're not going to pay these guys out for taking their 18 years of their lives. We're not going to pay them out. So here's a piece of paper. You sign that, and you're free. We'll give them what they want, but we're not going to give them everything. And I find it frustrating. I can only imagine in the moment that you're torn between the lack of responsibility that they're taking versus the weight of having your freedom. Yeah. And so tell me, if you can, both of you, your reaction to this when you were first presented with this idea, because I'd never heard of such a thing before.
I hadn't either. Yeah. I mean, my first reaction as soon as I heard it was, I don't care how we do it right now. Mm-hmm. Just get them out of there. And then once it's sunk in, you do realize that this is a guilty plea. But what we knew it was just crucial to get them out of prison, especially Damien, whose health was in such dire straits. But it's kind of, Eddie Vedder and I talked a lot during this time, and it was like, it's going to be so much easier. It's to fight from the outside, having them on the outside, and we can continue this work. We're still going to do the same work we would have done. And having them in and waiting for this hearing, which could have taken place 5 years from now, or they could have strung it out forever, the uncertainty of that, it just, at that moment, it was just like, yes. I mean, there was no hesitation for me. And, yeah.
For me, too. I knew I was dying. My health was, I hadn't had sunlight or fresh air or anything else in 10 years. I hadn't had any sort of nutrition in 18 years. There were times when I was so sick that I thought, this is it, I'm literally going to die tonight. They're going to come in the morning and find me dead. Not only that, but, the state, their main concern was having to pay us $60 million. Sure. I knew they could have had me stabbed to death for $50 any day of the week in prison. Right. So one way or another, whether it was just I was so sick that I couldn't last another 5 years, or whether I was killed in prison, I knew I would never live to see the outside of those walls if I didn't take that deal. So we knew some of the bad that was going to be attached to it, but at the same time, it was really like we didn't have much of a choice. And it still affects every single aspect of our lives here. Whenever we asked for a visa to come here, we were denied. And we had to, get the judge from the case to call and talk to the immigration officials. We had to have, all these people write letters of recommendation. It was non-stop work for like the last week, and we still didn't even know if I was going to be able to come or not up until 2 hours before we got on the plane to fly here.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, when you talk about fear and anxiety and things, that's just...
And unpacked 4 times. Yeah. Just not knowing, 1 second it's okay, we think it's going to work, the next second, no, it's probably not, then it's okay that you've been denied, then it's okay what they've decided to reopen the case, and it's just, you're just kept on this state of, expecting something, waiting for something all the time.
That's our time. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.